Hi guys, welcome to the second quarter of civics. So there are a few things that are changing for this quarter that we're going to experiment with. So one of them, click on the announcements. That hasn't changed. And as you can see, I have not fixed the announcements. So we're going to go to modules. So the first thing that you'll see is the legislative branch pretest. So that's one of the things that you're going to be completing today is the pretest. Remember, it's a pretest, so you're not supposed to know any of the answers. So don't freak out if you don't know anything. The next thing is the Edgenuity expectations. So this 9 weeks, I will be putting the Edgenuity grades into Focus instead of on Canvas because it was clogging up a lot of the Canvas grades. So this will just be easier for you and me to have the Edgenuity grades separate. So my expectations for your Edgenuity for this module, for this unit, are the organization of Congress, the powers of Congress, and how a bill becomes a law. And you should be finished with these modules by November 17th. So I give you a due date for those. So the next thing that you'll see is this video, the overall lesson video. So that's what you're watching right now. And in this video, I'm going to be going over this PowerPoint. So if you want to just go over the PowerPoint without having to watch the video, here's that link. So because we're not going to be meeting on a regular basis like we were last 9 weeks, I did that for 2 reasons. One is I wanted to record the lessons so you could watch them as often as you needed or whenever you needed to, because I know some people are sharing computers amongst a couple family members. So if you can't make it to class, that's perfectly okay, but you do still have to mark your attendance for yourself on Focus. If you don't mark your attendance by 3:30, I'm going to mark you absent. So you can mark your attendance for yourself. If you mark yourself present, that's fine. I will mark you absent by 3:30 if you have not marked yourself present. So if you need help, if you're watch these videos, you still don't understand what I'm talking about, or you don't understand what to do on an assignment, click or go over to the navigation menu and click sign up for a help session. And it takes you to this web page and explains what is a help session. This is where you and I work one-on-one together. So how do I join this session? So I'm going to call you on Teams to join the meeting on the date and at the time that you signed up for so we can chat. So make sure that you're on Teams at that time. You have to watch the lesson video before you ask me for help, because sometimes I'll answer that question in the lesson video that you have. If you still have questions, go down here and click here to sign up for a help session. So click that link and it takes you to Sign Up Genius. So find the dates that works for you and the best time that works for you. So say Friday at 2:30 works the best for me. So I'm going to click the little check mark box next to sign up for that session, and then go down here and click the submit and sign up. So the next screen pops up and it asks, what do you need help with? So I'll say vocabulary definitions, because that's the first assignment, and then type in your name so I know who I'm calling, and make sure that you have the right date and time. And then come down here and click the sign up now button. And so then I'll be able to see this. I'll get an email saying that you need to talk to me at this time on this date. And I'll be on Microsoft Teams and I'll call you. So then we're having a Teams chat, just as if we were in a regular meeting. And that's all there is to that. So now let's start our lesson. I don't know why it's saying bad gateway. There it goes. So if you get that message, just come up here and click the refresh button. All right, the legislative branch. So we're going to talk about the members of Congress, the organization of Congress, the powers, and how to pass a bill. So there are two houses of Congress. You have the House of Representatives and the Senate. This is called a bicameral legislature. This is established by Article 1 of the Constitution. The House of Representatives has 435 members. There is a limit on the members because it's all based on population. In 1789, there were only 65 representatives because there weren't that many states. Each member represents a congressional district, which is an area of the states that includes about 600,000 people. The number of districts depends on the state's population, so they have to divide it. The number is 600,000, so however they divide the 600,000 people. Every 10 years, Congress decides how districts will be apportioned or distributed by using the census. We just did a census in 2020. That's how many people lived in your house, how much money did you make, all that. If a state's population decreases, the state will lose seats in the House of Representatives. If a state's population increases, the state will gain seats. So if a state loses or gains seats, district lines need to be redrawn. Gerrymandering is the practice of redrawing the district lines to favor a person or a political group. So let's watch this video to explain gerrymandering more.
This is drive time, where you have a 99% chance of getting approved for a car. Flush down.
Awesome, because my credit is... Queen Lion of the Animal Kingdom is giving more democracy to her citizens by adding a legislative branch to the government. The citizens each get one vote and are divided into ranges. Each range will elect one representative to send to the newly created Jungle Council. To best understand how the system works, let's take a look at a small colony where there are just two political parties, the buffalo and jackalope. This colony is divided into 4 ranges. In the first election, jackalope candidates win 2 of them and buffalo candidates win the rest. All is well for several election cycles until the Animal Kingdom census taker comes around and shows that the population has both moved and grown. To better represent the larger population, a new seat is added to the Jungle Council, so the range's boundaries must be redrawn. This is where the trouble begins. Redrawing electoral boundaries is a huge political problem. To help them, the representatives of the Jungle Council hire a Weaselly consultant to figure out where the new boundaries should go. If Weasel draws rectangular boundaries, everything will be okay because the Jungle Council will, as close as possible, reflect how the citizens vote. However, Weasel doesn't do this. Instead, he tells the Buffalo Party that, for a price, he can turn their slim majority into a landslide victory in the election. With a supermajority on the Jungle Council, the Buffalo wouldn't have to listen to those pesky jackalope filibusters anymore, so the Buffalo gladly pay up. How can Weasel deliver on his promise? It's depressingly simple. By packing together as many jackalope voters into one range as possible and spreading the rest of them out, the Buffalo Party can win an additional seat without any voters switching allegiance. What Weasel and the Buffalo have done is called gerrymandering, the intentional changing of electoral boundaries for their benefit. Several election cycles later, the underrepresented and disgruntled Jackalope Party approaches Weasel and asks if he can manipulate the ranges to be in their favor instead of in the Buffalo's. Why, indeed he can. Using the same trick, Weasel packs Buffalo voters into a few ranges and spreads the rest among the Jackalope supporters. After the election, the Jackalopes, who represent a minority of voters, are now, nonetheless, the majority party on the Jungle Council. This is the terrible power of gerrymandering. Weasel can take the exact same voters and get either party to win the election. Unsurprisingly, Weasel's business grows, and eventually every colony in the Animal Kingdom pays him to gerrymander their ranges. With so many clients, Weasel now uses his computer to test hundreds of thousands of range combinations with elaborate statistical models of voter behavior to get the results he needs. Queen Lion has seen what Weasel is up to and banishes him from her kingdom. But the census taker reminds her that ranges still need to be redrawn as the population changes, so how is it going to be decided? Queen Lion suggests the obvious solution: a bipartisan committee must agree on all new range boundaries. This seems like a good idea. After all, if both parties have to agree on the ranges, then they must end up being fair to everyone. But after a few election cycles using this solution, Queen Lion notices that she always sees the same faces on the Jungle Council. Representatives almost never get defeated in their elections. It turns out that the interests of the representatives and the interests of the citizens are not the same. Citizens want elections where the candidates have to earn their vote. These are close elections where either candidate has a chance of winning. But representatives don't want close elections, they want safe elections. Elections where they run in a range that is filled with supporters. Because the representatives are in charge of the boundaries, they make the safest ranges possible. So bipartisan committees are not enough. To truly fix gerrymandering, there are 3 options. The first is to set up a politically independent commission of appointed experts or judges to draw the boundaries. Independent commissions are much better than bipartisan committees, but still not ideal because they usually group similar areas together, so the elections are uncompetitive. And there's always the possibility that the independent commission is not as independent as it appears. The second option is to let math decide the boundaries. There are a number of ways to mathematically divide an area into equally populous ranges. The simplest example of this is called the shortest split line method. Find the shortest line that splits the voters in twain and repeat as necessary until all the ranges are made. This is much better than an independent commission, but it does have the problem of occasionally producing skewed election results just through the pure bad luck of where the boundaries are drawn. But by publishing the algorithm used, all citizens can check the results and be confident that there is no intentional bias in the system. The last solution is an unexpected one. Hire back the weasel and embrace gerrymandering. But this time, pay him to make the winners most closely match the voters as a whole. While it seems unsavory, this is actually the best way to avoid disproportionate representation, which is, by far, the worst problem of gerrymandering. But considering these three solutions leaves Queen Lion grumpy. The first two are improvements, but still may result in uncompetitive elections or disproportionate results, while the third just feels wrong. Gerrymandering to avoid the problems of gerrymandering is odd. Remembering what she learned about voting before, she realizes that all this gerrymandering is really just a symptom of a more fundamental problem, the method by which each citizen gets only one vote and elects only one representative. There are ways to eliminate gerrymandering and restore competitive elections to make her citizens happy, but to do that, Queen Lion is going to have to make some big fundamental changes to her democracy.
So that's just a fun video to explain gerrymandering. So the members of House of Representatives, their congressional elections are held on even years, and each term is 2 years. So every 2 years, we elect new representatives for Congress. If a representative dies while they're elected, the state governor calls a special election. Then we have the Senate. This is 100 members. It's 2 people per state. In 1789, there were 26 senators because we had 13 states. So 26 divided by 2 is 13. Senators represent the whole state. Their elections are held on even numbered years too, 2010, 2012, 2014, etc. And each term for the senators is 6 years. So every 6 years, we elect new senators. If a senator dies, the governor appoints a replacement until the next election. To be a member of the House of Representatives, you have to be at least 25 years old. You have to have been a U.S. citizen for at least 7 years and a resident of the state represented. So you have to live in that state. To be a member of the Senate, you have to be at least 30 years old. You have to have been a U.S. citizen for at least 9 years and also a resident of the state represented. Their salary and benefits, their annual salary is $165,200. Members have offices in the Capitol building and receive an allowance to pay their staff. Member perks, they get free trips to their home state. The franking privilege is the right to mail official letters and packages for free, and they have immunity when called on in court. Rules of conduct. Each house has its own written rules for conducting business. These are found in the Article 1 of the U.S. Constitution and the House Rules and Manual and the Senate Manual. For example, in the Senate Manual, it talks about a filibuster or a method of delaying action on a bill by making long speeches. There's also expulsion. If a member commits a serious offense, the member could be expelled from office. Expulsion means that a person must give up their seat. Examples of expulsion, in the Pennsylvania House of Representatives, Michael Myers in 1980 and Raymond Lederer in 1981 were expelled due to their involvement in accepting bribes. We also have censure. Less serious offenses may bring a vote of censure or a formal disapproval of a member's actions. So that's like a referral. A censured member must stand alone at the front of the House or Senate and listen as their charges are read. So it's more of a public act of embarrassment. Some examples of censure were Joseph McCarthy in the 1950s. His charge was that he failed to cooperate with the subcommittee on rules and administration, and he repeatedly abused the members who were trying to carry out their assigned duties. And then the most recent is Charles Rangel. His charge was an ethics rules violation, an improper use of campaign contributions, and failure to report income when filing taxes. So how is Congress organized? During a representative's term, they serve the sessions. A session starts on January 3rd, or the first Monday after the new year, and ends when it has finished its legislative work near the end of the year. A joint session can occur between the House and the Senate for special occasions. So that's when the House and the Senate come together to meet. An example is during a declaration of war or the State of the Union address. The Constitution states that the Vice President is the presiding officer over the Senate. When the Vice President cannot make it, the President pro tempore presides. Members of the Senate vote for who the President pro tempore will be. So when Obama was president, Joe Biden was the vice president of the Senate. And right now that Trump's president, Mike Pence is the president of the Senate. Party leaders and whips in each house, members of the majority and minority parties have a floor leader and a whip. Floor leaders act as spokespersons for their parties. This is where you hear Mitch McConnell and Nancy Pelosi's names. They work to persuade members of both parties to vote for specific laws. Whips assist the floor leaders in communicating with party members, so like an assistant. They whip members into shape. Caucuses are when and where political parties pick their leaders. In the House, you have the Speaker of the House, who is the highest officer in the House of Representatives. He's elected by members of the House to make sure that everything runs smoothly. He's also a member of the majority party. So if most of the people in the Senate, in the House of Representatives are Democrats, the Speaker of the House will be a Democrat. If the majority party is the Republicans, the Speaker of the House will be a Republican. The party with less than half the seats is called the minority party. The duties of the Speaker of the House are to assign legislation to committees for discussion and preparation, decide the legislative agenda for a session of the House, and decide when and who can speak on an issue. Congress divides itself into different committees that focus on specific subject areas, for example, education, agricultural, science, etc. These are led by a chairperson who guides and sets priorities for their committees. Members are chosen by their political parties, and usually it's people that have had a background in it. Like if you are in the education committee, you know you've served on school boards, or you were a teacher, or you had some affiliation with the local schools, so you have some kind of experience in it. Committees have three main roles. They research specific subjects and hold hearings to get advice from experts. They write legislation, which are laws that are related to their specific subject areas, and they decide whether to send legislation to the floor, which means it's important enough for a vote. There are four different types of committees. You have the Standing Committee, the Joint Committee, the Select Committee, and the Conference Committee. A Standing Committee are permanent groups that are set up that are responsible for specific subject areas, and these are divided into subcommittees. So for example, we have Veterans Affairs, Homeland Security, Agriculture, and Education. These are things that we deal with constantly as a nation. Then you have joint committees. These are permanent committees made up of members of both houses, the Senate and the House of Representatives. They investigate issues and make recommendations, but they don't write bills. One of them will have to introduce it on either the House or the Senate floor. You have select committees. These are committees created to study an issue or an event. An example of that is the Energy Independence and Global Warming Committee. Then you have conference committees. These committees formed when two houses can't agree on the details of a bill. So they have to come together and have a discussion on what they can do. So here's a video on committees.
We've been coming to you this morning from the House Ways and Means Committee's hearing room here on Capitol Hill. You may not have heard of this room or this committee, but you should know that the committee deals with one of the primary functions of any government, taxes. And if these walls could talk, you'd hear stories about some of the best known figures in American history. House historian Matt Wisniewski says in the 19th century, the Ways and Means chairman was the second most powerful person in the House after the Speaker.
The role of Congress, one of the primary roles, is to raise revenue and expend that money on federal programs. And this is a committee that has a key role in that process.
Wilbur Mills, who chaired the committee for 18 years, played a key role in implementing President Johnson's Great Society programs in the 1960s, and was so influential, a colleague told the New York Times, "I never vote against God, motherhood, or Wilbur Mills."
Under the new debt law, a so-called super committee of the Congress is to identify more than $1 trillion in budget cuts by November. Washington, of course, is littered with the wreckage of past deficit committees that went nowhere. What are the prospects this time? We met today with two senators who have been at the center of the deficit debate. Fair to say, no politicians on Capitol Hill know more about the budget deficit and how to solve it than Republican Senator Saxby Chambliss of Georgia and Democratic Senator Mark Warner of Virginia. They were among 6 senators who tried to forge a deal before the president and the congressional leadership took over the negotiations. With a wealth of negotiating experience, we asked them what they thought of the new super committee that will take over the debate now.
I think it's going to be very difficult for this select committee to come up with any resolution that is a meaningful resolution. I just don't think the recipe is there for anything but deadlock with this committee.
I'm not sure the committee's going to get the job done. I voted for this very imperfect solution because at least it got us through the debt ceiling.
But Senator Chambliss, you are one of the most conservative members of the Senate. The president came out today as soon as the bill passed the Senate and said there have to be tax increases. What do you make of that?
Well, they're not going to be tax increases. That's one thing this committee will not even consider, and I don't think they should.
But how can a joint committee accomplish what the president himself and the leadership of the House and Senate were unable to accomplish?
Well, I think there is enormous bipartisan and frankly support from American people who have not been very happy with what we've done. I've been embarrassed by even being a member of Congress over the last few weeks that everybody's been finger pointing as opposed to trying to find solutions.
Senator Chambliss, you've been here for a long time. What's gone wrong? What's different right now?
Well, too often I think people tend to listen to outside forces who are single-minded or single-focused, rather than remembering those 600,000 people in the House that sent them there, or in my case, the 10 million people that sent me here.
It's kind of like the famous Winston Churchill quote, "You can always count on America to do the right thing after they've tried everything else." Well, we've pretty much tried everything else, and we in the political leaders now ought to get down to the business of doing the right thing.
Under the new law, if the Joint Committee on the Budget fails in its massive cuts, massive across-the-board cuts will be imposed automatically.
So that kind of explains how the committees work. So now we're on to powers of Congress. So we have the expressed powers. These powers are specifically stated in Article 1 of the Constitution. So these are the powers that are actually given, like written down, that this is what Congress does. They decide how to raise money by setting taxes and borrowing funds. They decide how to spend money for the benefit of the nation. They regulate commerce among states and foreign nations. They can declare war and create an army and a navy. They can coin or make money. They can regulate the process of becoming a citizen and create post offices. Then you have the implied powers. These are the powers that are implied based upon the expressed powers. Powers the Constitution gives Congress that are not listed in detail. So the Constitution gives Congress the power to make all laws which shall be necessary and proper. This is known as the elastic clause because those rubber bands, they bend. You can shape them a lot of different ways. So for example, it says they have the power to collect taxes, but the members themselves don't come and knock on your door and say, hey, we're here for your taxes. They create the IRS. So the implied power is that Congress can create the IRS to collect the taxes. So the Senate has 4 special powers. They have the trials of impeachment are held in the Senate after the House impeaches an official. The Senate chooses the vice president if no vice presidential candidate receives enough electoral votes. They approve treaties with other countries with a 2/3 vote, and they approve presidential appointments. For example, all federal judges and justices, diplomats, ambassadors, and department heads. Unique powers of the House of Representatives. They have the power to impeach or formally accuse of wrongdoing government officials, most importantly, the president. They choose the president if there is no majority in the Electoral College. And they also do the appropriation bills, which means they decide how they spend money. But we have limits on power. For example, we have the writ of habeas corpus, which is the right to know what you are tried for. Congress cannot take away due process except during civil war or invasion. And they cannot show favoritism or give titles of nobility. They don't have ex post facto laws. These are laws that make an act illegal, then allow the government to punish those who committed the act before it was made illegal. And there's also no bill of attainder. These are laws that provide for the punishment of specific people or group of people without a trial. Now we're on to how a bill becomes a law. So the first step is they have to introduce a bill. A bill is a proposed law. Any member of either house can introduce a bill. The ideas for bills come directly from the president, businessmen, farmers, and ordinary citizens like you and me. Bills can be introduced in both houses. The only exception to this rule is an appropriations bill, or one approving the spending of money, which must begin in the House of Representatives. This process starts by a member sponsoring or introducing the bill. The bill is then sent to one of the committees. The bill is sent to a standing committee. The subject of the bill determines which committee will receive the bill. The committee can decide to make no changes to the bill, rewrite the bill, or ignore the bill, which kills the chance of it becoming a law. And then they send it to a subcommittee for more study and investigation. If a bill is sent to a subcommittee, the subcommittee then reports back to the larger committee and decides what to do with the bill. The larger committee then votes to send it to the House floor to be debated. If the floor votes no, the bill is sent back to the committees. If it votes yes, it's sent to the other House of Congress to repeat the process. So on to the Senate. Even if the bill is passed by the House, it still has to go into committee in the Senate because both of them have to agree. Unlike the House, senators in the Senate are not limited in how long they can debate a bill. The act of talking a bill to death is known as a filibuster. The bill is then discussed amongst all senators, and again, amendments can be proposed at this time. A vote in the Senate to end debate is known as cloture. The conference committee resolves any differences between the House and Senate versions of the bill. The bill is then sent back to both houses for a final vote. Approved bills are sent to the president, who can sign the bill into law or veto it, or pocket veto. Congress cannot be in session if he pocket vetoes it. If the president vetoes the bill, it is sent back to the House and Senate, where they can vote to override the veto with a 2/3 vote. And then finally, the bill becomes the law. And so this is just a little graphic that shows you all the steps. And so our last video is I'm Just a Bill.
Whew, you sure sure gotta climb a lot of steps to get to this Capitol building here in Washington. Well, I wonder who that sad little scrap of paper is.
I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill. And I'm sitting here on Capitol Hill. Well, it's a long, long journey to the capital city. It's a long, long wait while I'm sitting in committee. But I know I'll be a law someday. At least I hope and pray that I will. But today I am still just a bill.
Gee, Bill, you certainly have a lot of patience and courage.
Well, I got this far. When I started, I wasn't even a bill. I was just an idea. Some folks back home decided they wanted a law passed, so they called their local congressman, and he said, "You're right, there ought to be a law." And he sat down and wrote me out and introduced me to Congress, and I became a bill. And I'll remain a bill until they decide to make me a law. I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill. And I got as far as Capitol Hill. Well, now I'm stuck in committee, and I'll sit here and wait while a few key congressmen discuss and debate whether they should let me be a law. How I hope and pray that they will. But today I am still just a bill.
Listen to those congressmen arguing. Is all that discussion and debate about you?
Yeah, I'm one of the lucky ones. Most bills never even get this far. I hope they decide to report on me favorably, otherwise I may die.
Die?
Yeah, die in committee. Oh, but it looks like I'm going to live. Now I go to the House of Representatives and they vote on me.
If they vote yes, what happens?
Then I go to the Senate and the whole thing starts all over again.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes. I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill. And if they vote for me on Capitol Hill, well, then I'm off to the White House where I'll wait in a line with a lot of other bills for the president to sign. And if he signs me, then I'll be a law. How I hope and pray that he will. But today I am still just a bill.
You mean even if the whole Congress says you should be a law, the president can still say no?
Yes, that's called a veto. If the president vetoes me, I have to go back to Congress and they vote on me again, and by that time you're sold.
By that time, it's very unlikely that you become a law. It's not easy to become a law, is it?
No, but how I hope and pray that I will. But today I am still just a bill. He signed your bill. Now you're a law. Oh, yes.
All right, so let's go. Oops, hold on. Go back here. So on your announcements for things that you need to have done, so work on your vocabulary definitions. So it says in the middle column, write the definition of the word. You can use dictionary.com to help you with the definitions. In this assignment, you may copy and paste the definitions. And in the last column, copy and paste a picture from Google that relates to that word. I did the first one for you. So you download this document. And then open it. Make sure you click enable editing so you can type into it. And then I did the first one for you. The Senate is a smaller upper assembly in the US Congress, most US states, France, and other countries. And then I gave you a picture of the US Senate. And so you're going to go through and you're going to define the rest of these words and get a little picture. And then the next thing, you're going to have reading essentials, discussion questions, and quizzes. So download the document below, read the passages and answer the questions as you read, and then upload the completed document for grading. So again, this is a Microsoft Word. Click enable editing so you can type into it. And so everything that it asks you, you have to do unless I have blocked it out. So here you have in the first column, answer the questions based on what you know, and after this lesson, complete the last column. So what's the difference between the two houses of Congress? You'll see that in the reading. In your own words, what opinion about gerrymandering is expressed in the cartoon? This is the cartoon they're talking about. Let's see. When it says mark the text, underline the words that tell you what pro tempore means. I will actually be looking for you to complete that. And that's it. And then so you save it and then upload it. And then discussion question. So this one is, why is Congress composed of a House of Representatives and a Senate? So you don't type your answer in here, you click the reply button, and then this box pops up and you can type in here and then click post reply. And then the next thing is another discussion question. Again, click reply and then you can type your answer. And then here's the quiz. So you have 2 attempts. It keeps the highest attempt. And the quiz is 5 questions, which are 4 multiple choice questions and then 5 matching. So all of them modules are set up pretty much the same as this, with reading essentials, discussion questions, and quizzes. So as you can see, reading essentials, discussion, quiz, reading essentials, discussion, quiz. So they all look the same like that. And don't forget your edgenuity expectations. And that's it for now.